Hello everyone, welcome to my class. Welcome to this channel. For this semester, I was lucky enough to be given a new subject to handle. And this is accounting for income taxation. Alam niyo medyo mahirap-hirap ano? Personally, para sa akin, medyo challenging yung subject na ito. Lalong-lalo na kung ikaw ay non-BSing student or Bachelor of Science in Business Administration pero iba yung major mo, not into accounting. Kasi way back in the undergraduate, so ito yung isa sa mga wala akong masyadong natutunan. Kasi alam niyo to be honest, during my time, and that was 7, 8, or 9 years ago, yung prof namin dito, walang tinuro sa amin. Totoo, no? Wala siyang naibigay sa amin na lesson. Minimit niya lang kami siguro for 15 to 20 minutes. Bibigyan niya lang kami ng mga BIR forms and try to fill it up, ano? Pero wala talagang lecture na naganap. So, nung undergraduate, wala akong kaalam-alam, ano? Wala akong kamuwang-muwang sa content ng taxation for income taxation. Nagkaroon lang ako ng idea doon sa review sessions na. Kasi this is part of our board exam sa Certified Public Accountant or doon sa CEPALE. So, doon lang ako natuto kaya medyo naging mahirap ito para sa akin. Alam niyo, ito yung isa sa mga pinakamababa kong score sa board exam. Okay? So, medyo challenging ito para sa akin. So, I don't really expect na madadalian kayo sa subject na ito. Pero hindi ito pananakot. I'm just stating the facts. And marami kasi talaga yung nahihirapan dito. Pero hindi ibig sabihin na nahihirapan ako, papahirapan ko kayo. So, I think you are also lucky to have me as your instructor, as your online facilitator for the subject because ang commitment ko naman is to give my students quality learning. So, before I give this to you, kailangang paghandaan ko ito. So, inaaral ko ito. So, in a way, naging symbiotic yung relationship. Win-win situation ito. Kasi natututo na kayo, natututo din ako. Nire-refresh din yung aking mga knowledge. Way back, almost a decade ago. Okay? So, ang topic natin for today actually is part 1. Kasi mahaba-haba, yung fundamental principles of taxation. Marami itong topics covered. So, hati-hatiin lang muna natin ito. And dito sa topic natin sa ngayon, puntahan lang muna natin yung learning objectives. Ano ba ang mga matututunan ninyo sa topic natin sa ngayon? Okay, so by the end of this week, the student should be able, you as the student should be able to understand some essential taxation concepts and principles. Yung mga fundamental principles involving taxation. As follow. Siyempre, we have to define what taxation really is. Ano ba itong taxation? Ano ba yung mga inherent powers of the state and yung kanilang mga similarities and differences? We will also be discussing, we will be dealing the purpose of taxation, yung theory and basis of taxation, and then after that, pag-usapan naman natin yung scope of the power to tax. Kasi this is a power granted to the sovereign state. So meron tayong power to tax. Now, meron din tayong pag-uusapan on essential elements of a tax. Ano yung aspects of taxation? And then lastly, the nature or characteristics of the state's power to tax. So yan yung pag-uusapan natin sa ngayon. Pero what is it for you naman? Ano naman yung expectation ko dapat sa inyo? Well, kung meron tayong mga Zoom sessions, kung meron mang dinesignate or may inassign ako sa inyo na Zoom session, I hope that you will be able to attend. Kasi mas maganda na nagmi-meet tayo online. Kasi ang ating mode of learning is synchronous and asynchronous. And I want you to study the applicable topics for the week. So kung ano yung content natin dito, pag-aralan ninyo ito on your own and then watch the recorded video lecture. Kagaya nitong video lecture na ni-ready ko sa inyo sa ngayon. And syempre, kung masipag ka mag-aral, you are running for honors, edi dagdagan mo na yung inyong kasipagan, you research and cross-reference the topics with other materials na available online or offline. Kung meron kang mga textbook, but may mga libro ka, may other materials ka, PDF or kung PowerPoint or Word document or kung anumang kopya meron ka, edi double check mo para madagdag ang kaalaman mo. So, maaring makapulot ka kasi ng mga additional information na hindi ko nailagay dito sa ating module. Okay, so now let's begin our discussion on taxation. Now, first, pag-usapan natin yung definition ng taxation. Ang pinakaunang definition na gusto kong ibigay sa inyo is this one, wherein ang sinasabi, taxation is the process or means by which the sovereign, yung independent state, through its lawmaking body, yung legislative body ng government or the legislature, imposes burden upon subjects and objects within its jurisdiction for the purpose of raising revenues to carry out the legitimate objects of government. Ngayon, kung mapapansin ninyo dito sa ating presentation, sa ating word, meron ako mga highlight na mga phrases or words. Because, yan yung parang pinaka-essence ng definition na ito. Himayin natin siya ngayon. Pag sinabi kasing taxation, ito ay isang proseso. Meron tayong sinusundan na mga hakbang. At ito ay isang pamamaraan kung saan yung gobyerno natin, because when we are talking of a sovereign state, an independent state, ito ay isang bansang malaya, ito ay isang, sabihin na natin na nasyon, isang territory na nakakapag-decide on its own. Kaya independent state, And syempre, nasa Philippine setting tayo, we are referring to the Republic of the Philippines. Ang sinasabi dito, proseso yung taxation kung saan yung ating bansa sa pamamagitan ng lawmaking body o yung legislature. Sa Pilipinas, sa ating setting, meron tayong dalawang chamber, the upper and the lower chamber. Yung legislative body, ang tinutukoy nito ay yung House of Congress at saka yung Senate. Okay? Yung mga binubuo ng mga congressman at senador kasi sila yung mga lawmaking body. Sila yung gumagawa ng mga batas. Okay? Kung saan, taxation is a process by which the sovereign imposes burden. Pag sinabi nating imposes, nagpapataw ng bigat, burden. Alam mo kaya ito sinabi na bigat? Kasi yung pagbabayad ng tax sa tayo bilang mga taxpayer, medyo mabigat yan sa bulsa because naglalabas tayo ng pera, nagbabayad tayo sa gobyerno ng ating buwis. So in a way, that's a burden to us. Okay? Sino ba yung mga binubuwisan? Ang sinasabi kasi dito, ang tinutukoy, subjects and objects within its jurisdiction. Yung subjects, ito yung kanyang mga mamamayan, yung nasasakupan niya, yung mga tao. Pero sa taxation kasi, hindi lang tao yung binubuwisan at yung nagbabayad ng buwis. Even objects. Pag sinabi nating objects, for example, yung mga properties, mga rights, privileges, binubuwisan din ang mga yan. So, subjects and objects. Pero, ang scope nito is within the jurisdiction, within the territory ng estado na yon, Kaya sa atin, within our republic. Okay, for the purpose, yung objective is to raise money, to raise revenue to carry out the legitimate objects of government. Kinakailangan natin ito or kinakailangan ito ng gobyerno para makapag-raise ng pera na magagamit nila para ipagpatuloy kung ano man yung mga legitimate objectives of the government for good governance. To promote good governance para mapabuti yung kalagayan din ng kanyang mga mamamayan. Now, that is the first and I think that is my favorite definition. Yung second definition ng taxation is that is an act of levying. O act of levying, pag sinabing levying, it is imposing, yung pagpapataw. A tax to apportion the cost of government among those who in some measure are privileged to enjoy its benefits and must therefore bear its burden. O, sa definition na ito, ang sinasabi, ito ay pagpapataw ng buwis para yung cost of government sa pagpapatupad kasi ng mga batas, sa pagpapatakbo ng gobyerno, sa pamamahala, may mga gastusin din yan. At hindi ka pwedeng, parang sa negosyo lang din kasi yan. Hindi mo mapapatakbo ang negosyo nang walang mga gastusin. So there is a cost of management. There is a cost of governance. And para magkaroon tayo ng panghuhugutan ng pera, kailangang buwisan yung kanyang mga mamamayan at yung mga objects that is within that jurisdiction. Okay? And in some way, in some measure, para doon sa mga tao kasi na nag-i-enjoy ng benefits. Yung nakakatikim ng mga benefits na ibinibigay sa kanila ng government. Who are in some measure privileged to enjoy its benefit. O kaya, they have to bear the burden. Okay? Next, the next definition of taxation is that it is a power inherent. Pag sinabi nating inherent, likas na kapangyarihan, kaya inherent power. Natural, So, in every sovereign state, being essential to the existence of every government. Kung wala yung power na ito, without this power, no sovereign state can exist or endure. So, syempre, kung wala kang pera to fund the cost of management, to fund the cost of governance, so wala kang sovereign state, Wala kang estado na mabubuhay kasi kailangan mo ng pera para mabuhay, Now, even if not mentioned in the Constitution, the state can still exercise this power. So kahit pala wala ito sa Constitution, makakapag-exercise pa rin yung estado ng kapangyarihan na ito, which is to tax its people, to tax its subjects and objects. Kasi nga, inherent power ito. Okay, let me read it to you. The power to tax is one of the three inherent powers of the state. Meron kasi tayong tatlong powers of the state at ito yung pag-uusapan natin dito. We have the police power, the power of taxation, and then the power of eminent domain. Pag sinabi nating police power, ito yung kapulisan, yung kapangyarihan ng pagpupulis. It is the power of the state, okay, for promoting public welfare by restraining and regulating the use of liberty and property. Although malaya tayo, meron tayong liberty, merong democracy, but still, there have to be laws where we have to follow, where we have to abide. Otherwise, magiging chaotic, magkakagulo. Kaya nga nagkakaroon ng mga krimen o kahit na organized yung society, meron pa rin mga krimen because they are not following the laws. And kailangan merong kapangyarihan, may kamay na bakal, kumbaga, para to promote public welfare. Sa ikabubuti din ng mga tao na nasasakupan ng gobyerno na yon. Ang power to tax or power of taxation, yan yung pangalawa sa inherent power of the state. And then, yung pangatlo, which is the power of eminent domain. Ito yung kapangyarihan ng Estado to purchase or to acquire private property for public purpose upon payment of just compensation. Kaya minsan, siguro, hindi ko lang alam kung na-experience na ninyo ito, baka sa inyong mga lugar, minsan makikita ninyo may mga road widening project yung DPWH, tapos naapektuhan yung ibang mga kabahayan, pero ang ginagawa kasi ng gobyerno because they have the power of eminent domain. So, bibilihin nila yung mga private property na pagmamayari ng mga private individuals because the objective is for public purpose. Let's say sa aking example, for road widening, that is for public purpose, for the enjoyment or for the privilege of the majority, of the common good para sa lahat. O kaya, meron silang kapangyarihan na bumili ng mga private properties. But of course, for just compensation, kailangang bayad. Hindi naman pwede na libre. So those are the three inherent powers of the state kung saan yung power of taxation ay kasama. Now, let me share it to you lang. We have to distinguish kung ano-ano yung similarities and yung differences nitong tatlong police power. Yung nature, ito yung parang pinaka-definition nung tatlo, taxation, police power, and eminent domain. Now, in terms of authority, ang may otoridad for taxation and police power is the government only. Samantalang pagdating sa eminent domain, it may be granted to public service or utility companies. Let's say for the use of roads. Kasi it can be granted to mga public utility companies. Pagdating sa purpose, yung taxation, it is for the support of the government. Siyempre, magbe-benefit din kasi nito eventually is yung mga tao, pero kailangan may support from the government. Now, for police power, it is for the promotion of general welfare through regulation. Kinakailangan kasi na nire-regulate. Okay? Eminent domain, ang purpose nito is the taking of private property for public use. Now, in terms of persons affected, parehas lang ang taxation and police power. It applies to a community or class of individuals. And also, it can be applied to property and excises that may be subject thereto. Samantalang, pagdating dito sa public domain, ayan, it is applicable, it affects yung mga individual as the owner of that personal property. And only particular property is comprehended. So, mga private properties lang ito, at apektado nito yung mga tao lamang. Kung sino yung nagmamay-ari ng mga lupa na yon, ng mga properties na yon. Now, in terms of scope, sa taxation, it is plenary, comprehensive, and supreme. Mamaya, pag-uusapan din natin itong mga terms na ito. Pagdating doon sa police power, it is broader in application kasi, and general power to make and implement law. Samantalang pagdating sa eminent domain, it is merely a power to take private property for public use. Lagi ninyong tatandaan yung terms na ito, private property for public use. Now, as to the effect, yung taxation yung buwis, it becomes a contribution which becomes part of the public fund. Pondo na ito ng public. Samantalang pagdating sa police power, walang transfer of title. Mayroong mga restraint, there may just be a restraint on the injurious use of property. Samantalang, ang effect sa eminent domain, magkakaroon ng transfer of title to property na ipapasa yung pagmamay-ari ng property or let's say ng land, ng lupa mula doon sa private papunta sa government. Kasi binibili ito upon just compensation. Now, ano ba yung mga benepisyo? Sa taxation, ang benefit nito is in the form of protection and benefits received from the government. And syempre kasi, yung buwis kasi na kinokolekta mula sa mga tao ay nagagamit din ito para sa tao, sa pamamagitan ng mga programa ng gobyerno. Sa police power, walang direct and immediate effect or benefit, but only as such as may arise from the maintenance of a healthy economic standard of society. Sa tawag nito doon sa eminent domain, yung benefit na natatanggap nung party na pinagbilahan, yung private person or private individual is the market value of the property taken. Magkano yung current fair market value nun? Yun yung kanyang benefit na marireceive. Now, in terms of the amount of imposition, unlimited pagdating doon sa taxation, walang limit. Pero doon sa police power, yung sapat lang, para i-cover yung cost of the license and the necessary expenses of police surveillance and regulation. Kaya minsan may mga impositions doon sa police power. Sa eminent domain, wala itong imposition kung hindi, yung owner ay binabayaran doon sa fair value ng property na binili sa kanya ng government. So those are the distinctions, those are the similarities and differences nitong tatlong inherent powers of the state. Okay? Pero syempre, ang emphasis natin is etong power of taxation. Now, ano ba ang objective or ano ba yung purpose ng taxation? Meron kasi tayong dalawang purpose of taxation. Yung primary and then yung secondary. Yung pinaka-primary na purpose of taxation can be found doon mismo sa pinaka-definition. Pwede natin ito i-refer doon sa first definition ng taxation, which is, ang primary purpose is revenue or fiscal purpose. Basically, that is to provide funds or property with which to promote the general welfare and protection of its citizen. Para makakuha ng pondo na magagamit para sa general welfare and protection ng mga tao o mga mamamayan nito, pang-finance ng mga activities ng government. So halimbawa na lang yung income and business taxes. So syempre, tayo mga nagtatrabaho tayo, kumikita tayo, either ikaw ay isang empleyado or may negosyo ka, so merong income taxes, merong business taxes. So it is imposed sa atin at sa mga businesses, sa mga establishments to provide funds for the government. Secondary is more of regulatory, yung sumptuary or compensatory. Ang term dito na hinighlight ko is that pag sinabi nating regulatory purpose, taxation is a device for regulation control. Ito, maisasabi natin na implementation of police power. Kung saan, certain effects or conditions envisioned by the government ay naaabot, nami-meet. Promotion of general welfare, yung reduction of social inequality, and then economic growth. Ang example dito, para masigit ninyong ma-appreciate itong pangalawang purpose, let's say, yung example ng taxes imposed for regulation, meron tayong tinatawag ng mga sin tax, okay? Excise taxes for cigarettes and alcohol, no? Amusement taxes for night and day clubs, cockpits, racetracks. So this is more to regulate, kasi let's say, yung mga alak at mga sigarilyo, okay, meron tayong mga excise taxes doon para ma-regulate yung pagbebenta nito, makontrol yung pagbebenta. At syempre, ito pang isa, yung mga amusement taxes para sa mga clubs, night clubs, day clubs, mga sabungan, mga racetracks, so para ma-regulate din etong mga activities na ito. Now, yung example ng mga buwis, kung saan ang objective naman is to meet yung social or economic objectives, meron kasi tayong tinatawag na yung mga graduated taxes. Increases or increasing taxes in periods of prosperity. Pag umuunlad, pag lumalago, tumataas din yung mga buwis. And then also yung granting of tax incentives to promote new or pioneer industries and encourage growth of local industries. Ang example na nilagay ko dito, yung mga tax incentives na binibigay sa mga establishments, usually mga foreign companies na pumapasok sa Pilipinas para magnegosyo dito. Meron tayong mga PEZA zones. Okay, kung saan meron silang mga tax incentives, nagiging zero rated or marami pang mga incentives na binibigay sa kanila para ma-encourage sila na magnegosyo dito para na rin sa ikabubuti ng economy ng ating bansa. Okay, so we have two purpose, yung primary at saka yung secondary. Okay, now pag-usapan naman natin yung theory of taxation. Okay, kinulang tayo, Theory of taxation. Meron ako ditong nilagay yung necessity theory and then lifeblood theory. Pag-usapan muna natin ano yung necessity theory. Yung kapangyarihan kasi na magbuwis proceeds upon the theory kung saan yung existence daw ng government is a necessity. Kinakailangan na mayroong gobyerno. So dahil kinakailangan na mayroong gobyerno, o necessity din na magkaroon ng power to tax. Necessity na magkaroon ng pagbubuwis sa mga subjects and objects nito. Otherwise, syempre, hindi mabubuhay yung government. Kasi ang kagaya ng sinabi dito, yung nilagay ko dito, it is a necessary burden para ma-preserve yung soberenya ng Estado and the means to give the citizenry, yung mga sundalo, yung navy, yung mga kapulisan, mga civil servants, to promote public improvements para din sa kapakinabangan ng mga mamamayan for the enjoyment of the citizenry. So, yun din yung purpose nun. So, parang bumabalik din ito sa mga nasasakupan. Pag lifeblood theory, it is on the basis, okay, wherein the government can neither exist nor endure without taxation because we treat taxes as the lifeblood of the government. So, kinakailangan na nabubuwisan yung mga nasasakupan nito. Okay? Yung lifeblood doctrine. Meron akong highlight dito, in-emphasize, the government cannot continue to perform its basic functions of serving and protecting its people without the means to pay its expenses. So, kung walang buwis, walang makokolekta yung government, wala silang panggastos, paano makakapag-provide ng good service, good governance, proper governance sa mga tao nito? So, lifeblood theory. Now, meron tayong basis of taxation, yung tinatawag na reciprocity theory or the benefits received. So, ito parang doctrine of symbiotic relationship kung saan binubuwisan ka ng Estado para ma-enjoy mo din kung ano yung pwedeng maibigay sa iyo ng government. Basahin ko lang para mas maintindihan ninyo ito. For the state collects taxes from the subjects of taxation in order that it may be able to perform the functions of government. Para naman doon sa mga subjects nito, yung mga mamamayan, nagbabayad ng buwis para ma-enjoy nila yung mga benefits of an organized and civilized society. Kasi kung walang organized society, kung walang namumuno sa mga tao, para lang mga barbaric yung mga tao na walang batas na sinusunod, kanya-kanya sila, it is a chaotic environment. Magulo ito. So, syempre, to perform the functions of government, na may enjoy din ng mga tao at makapamuhay sila ng payapa at ligtas, or kailangan merong buwis. So, merong symbiotic relationship. Pag symbiotic, win-win situation. Nakikinabang ka, nakikinabang ako, panalo tayo parehas. So, that is the basis of taxation. Reciprocity theory. Now, ano-ano ba yung scope of the power to tax? Meron tayo ditong 4. Comprehensive, unlimited, plenary, and supreme. Ang taxation kasi, ito yung may pinaka-broadest na scope sa lahat ng mga powers ng government. In the absence of limitations kasi, it is considered comprehensive, unlimited, plenary, and supreme. At makikita ninyo kung ano yung tinutukoy nito. Pag sinabi kasing comprehensive, it covers mga tao, businesses, activities, professions, rights and privileges. Pag unlimited naman, unless walang limitation, unlimited yung pagpapataw ng buwis, yung saklaw nito, yung nasasakupan. Plenary, ibig sabihin unconditional, absolute or complete. Now, the BIR or the Bureau of Internal Revenue may avail of certain remedies to ensure collection of taxes. Sa Supreme naman, insofar as the selection of the subject of taxation. So, ito yung scope of the power to tax. Now, dako naman tayo sa essential elements of a tax. At meron tayong 6 dito na in-enumerate. The first one is enforced contribution. Yun yung aking hinighlight dito. Pag sinabing enforced, hindi yan voluntaryo, mandatory yan. Kinakailangan na magbayad ka. Hindi kung kailan mo gusto. Payment is not voluntary but an enforced contribution. Sa ayaw mo o sa gusto, magbabayad ka ng buwis. Hindi kung kailan mo lang gusto. It is generally payable in money. Siyempre, money is the legal tender. So, payable dapat yung buwis in the form of cash. Proportionate in character. Pag sinabi natin proportionate in character, dito meron akong hinighlight yung ability to pay theory or theoretical justice. It should be proportionate. Ang best example ko dito, yung mga mayayaman, kung may mga kakilala kayo or kung ikaw mismo mayaman, so mas malaki yung buwis na binabayaran mo, either directly or indirectly. Kasi kunwari, syempre marami kang pera, meron kang capacity para bumili ng kung ano man yung mga gusto mo. And syempre, every time you purchase, there is a value-added tax. So maraming na ipapataw sa iyo na buwis indirectly kasama doon sa value ng binili mo, hindi mo nga lang alam. So, proportionate. Siyempre, yung mga mahihirap, limited lang naman yung pera nila kung kailan lang sila may pera, may spare na pambili, and usually yung mga basic necessities ito, pwede yun lang din naman yung time na nabubuwisan sila indirectly, And syempre, may mga iba na minimum wage earner, so exempt sila from from taxation. So that is the proportionate in character na element of a tax. It is levied, on persons, property, or the exercise of a right or privilege. Ito yung mga subjects and objects of taxation. Kanino or sino-sino yung mga pinapatawan ng buwis. Sino yung nagpapataw? This is levied by the legislative body of the state. Si Congress, yung Kongreso, which is yung Senado at saka yung House of Representatives, hindi nila ito pwedeng i-delegate sa Supreme Court or sa Presidente, ano? Kasi meron tayong tinatawag na separation of the powers of the states. Independent body sila, so it cannot be delegated. Although meron itong exception, yung mga non-delegation rule. Pag-uusapan ito natin later on. It is levied for public purpose. Ang pinakasilbi kasi nung taxation is for the public good, for public purpose. So those are the 6 elements in tax, okay? Elements of tax. Now, ano yung aspects of taxation? Ano yung tinutukoy nito? Pag sinabi nating aspects of taxation, ang tinutukoy lang nito is the stage or the phase or the process na naka-embody doon sa term na taxation. Kasi nga 'di ba, taxation is a process or a means. So meron itong mga stages, may mga phases. So meron tayong tatlo. Levying, and after levying comes yung assessment and then the collection. Yung levying, ito yung imposition of tax, which is a legislative function. Yung assessment, ito yung pagde-determine magkano. Correct determination, computation ng amount. But this is an executive function. Ang collection, ito na yung pangongolekta. Nag-impose ka, which is a legislative act. Tapos in-assess magkano, di ko kolektahin na sa'yo kung ikaw yung subject of taxation. And dito sa ating bansa, it is the Bureau of Internal Revenue, which is the national agency na inatasan ng pamahalaan para mangolekta ng mga internal revenue taxes. And this is also an executive function. So those are the 3 aspects or the stages of taxation. Okay? Is it hard to take, Maraming mga information, maraming principles of taxation. Ilan pa lang yan, madami pa tayong pag-uusapan. Pag-usapan natin ngayon yung nature or yung characteristics of the state's power to tax. Ano-ano ba ito? Una, ang sinasabi dyan, it is inherent in sovereignty. So likas siya, yung Estado pwedeng mag-enforce ng contribution kahit walang constitutional provision. Because yung Estado mayroong supreme power to command and enforce obedience to the people. So kahit wala yan sa batas, dahil inherent power yan, pwede tayong singilin ng buwis. Okay? Second one is, it is legislative in character. Pag legislative, ibig sabihin, yung lawmaking body, yung nakakapag-exercise nito, hindi pwede si executive, hindi pwede si judicial. Executive, ito yung, let's say, for our national government, ito yung ating Office of the President, yung executive department. Yung judicial branch, ito yung ating Supreme Court, ito yung mga trial courts, regional trial courts, municipal trial courts, because they are the law interpreting body. Okay? Yun nga lang, kahit na legislative in character yung ating power to tax, meron itong exception. Yung tinatawag natin na exception to non-delegation rule. I-relate natin ito doon sa essential element number 5, Balikan ko lang, pakita ko lang sa inyo this one. Kasi 'di ba, sabi dito levied by the legislative body, pero kahit hindi ito pwedeng i-delegate, kung provided ito sa Constitution, and then we have to follow the Constitution. Kasi may mga delegated sa Presidente because it is provided for in the 1987 Constitution. So that is an exception to the rule. Another one, meron ding mga delegated na power sa mga LGUs. Yung LGU, ito yung local government units, yung mga city, yung mga municipality, Pero provided that it is given by the Constitution. Nakalagay kasi dito, yung power of LGU to impose taxes and fees is always subject to the limitations which Congress may provide. Kasi si LGU, wala naman itong inherent power to tax. Nagkakaroon lang siya ng power to tax because it was delegated to them as provided in the Constitution. Now, next. I-compare lang natin yung power to tax, yung national versus local. In terms of authority kasi, yung national, that is inherent. Samantalang pagdating sa local, which is your LGUs, it is delegated. In terms of nature, parehas siya legislative, Pero sa national, through enactment of laws by the Congress and the Senate. Pagdating sa local, sa pamamagitan ng mga local na ordinansa na binibigay ng local legislative branch. Kaya nga, makikita ninyo may mga local ordinances yung inyong mga municipalities or cities kung saan kayo nakatira na magkakaiba sa ibang mga bayan or ibang mga syudad. Maaring sa Mandaluyong may ganitong ordinansa, bawal yung riding in tandem, bawal yung dalawang lalaki nakasakay sa motor. Pero pagdating mo ng Makati, pagdating mo ng San Juan or kung saan mang city na katabi nito, okay naman na siya. Okay? I remember kasi 'di ba, pag nandiyan tayo sa Manila, meron tayong mga angkas, 'di ba? So, pagdating sa Mandaluyong, bawal hindi ka pwede, hindi ka papayagan kasi lalaki sa lalaki, So, meron kasing ride in tandem na ordinance. Bawal 'yon. Delegation to administrative agencies. May mga aspects kasi ng taxes na hindi naman talaga legislative in nature na pwedeng i-delegate sa mga administrative agencies. Kagaya ng power to value property, property valuation, property appraisals, power to assess and collect taxes. And then, yung power to perform details of computation, appraisement, or adjustment, among others. So, these are more administrative. Hindi talaga siya legislative kasi wala namang ginagawang batas. So, tagapag-implementa lang siya. Now, meron pa tayong exemption na isa, government entities, agencies, and instrumentalities. Now, ang sinasabi dito, immunity is necessary in order that government functions will not be impeded. Pag sinabing immunity, ligtas ka. Diba? Immune, okay? Otherwise, the government will be taxing itself to raise money for itself. Kasi nga, diba, kanino ka ba nangongolekta? Sa mga tao. So, kaya ka nagkakaroon ng pera because you are taxing the people. Bubuwisan mo pa ba yung sarili mo? So, hindi na. Kaya merong exemption na ito, ito yung mga tandaan ninyo, yung agencies performing governmental functions, they are tax exempt unless expressly taxed. Performing governmental functions. So, highlight ko lang ito, this one. Yung second bullet naman, kapag yung mga agencies, yung mga government agencies, they are performing proprietary functions, they are subject to tax. This one. Okay? Pag governmental function, tax exempt. Pag proprietary function, subject to tax. Unless expressly exempted. Yung nauna, unless expressly taxed. Pag sinabi natin expressly, kapag sinabi talaga na exempt ka. Pag sinabi talaga na kailangan mong buwisan. Otherwise, we have to follow this rule. Kung governmental functions ka, tax exempt. Kung proprietary function ka, subject to tax. Or ibig sabihin, kailangan mong buwisan. Meron din tayong mga GOCCs, government-owned and controlled corporations. And eto, pag performing proprietary functions, subject to tax pa rin yan. Kagaya nung second bullet. With the exception of the following: GSIS, SSS, PhilHealth, yung PCSO, and then yung mga local water districts under Republic Act 10026. So, ito yung mga tandaan ninyo. Ito yung mga exemptions. Now, meron pang isa, na essential characteristic or yung nature is that meron tayong tinatawag na international committee. Pag sinabing international committee, that is your polite and friendly agreements among the nations. So, meron kasi tayong local laws, meron tayong national laws, meron din tayong international laws. Pagdating sa international laws, ang sinasabi is the property may not be taxed by another state. Kung ikaw si Pilipinas, hindi mo pwedeng buwisan yung mga properties ng Indonesia. Hindi mo pwedeng buwisan yung properties ng Malaysia. And vice versa. Kasi we treat the states as equal, merong sovereign equality. And among others, Kaya hindi pwede. Friendly, friendly neighborhood. Okay? So, yun yung international committee. Second to the last, limitation of territorial jurisdiction. Ano bang ibig sabihin nito? ang mga batas sa pagbubuwis or the tax laws, it cannot operate beyond a state's territorial limit. Kaya nga doon mismo sa definition ng taxation, may nakalagay doon, to impose burdens para sa kanyang mga subjects, para sa kanyang mga objects within its jurisdiction. So merong territorial limit, no? Kung hanggang saan ka lang, kung ano lang yung territory mo, yun lang yung pwede mong buwisan. Other than that, beyond that, hindi na pwede. Kasi iba na rin yung nagmamay-ari nun. And then, i-relate na rin natin ito dito sa International Committee. Kasi nga, pag meron ng separate na sovereign doon, past our territory, meron na rin silang separate na independent state. And we have to honor them. We have to accept them, the equality between different states. Last, strongest among the inherent powers of the state, as mentioned then previously. Okay? So, ito yung ating mga kailangang pag-usapan ngayon. Yung pinakahuli, that those are the nature or the characteristics of the state's power to tax. Okay, so I hope medyo naintindihan ninyo yung ating pinag-usapan ninyo. I think it's hard to take in and to absorb, pero kaya natin ito ginawang video lecture para pwede ninyong ma-pause yung video at absorb nyo muna ito. I-appreciate nyo muna kung ano yung tinutukoy nito. And syempre, kagaya nga ng aking instruction dito, mas maganda na i-research mo ito further and to cross-reference the topics with other reference materials. Okay? So that's it for our part 1 ng chapter 1 on fundamental principles of taxation. I'll see you around on my next video. Bye-bye.